Well, in Washington, there's been some chaos in the House, and we finally have a speaker. And joining us today from Bluffton University, we've got Dr. Perry Bush in to talk about what's been happening in Washington. So thanks for joining us.
Always glad to be with you, Holly.
All right. So first of all, it took a while to get a House Speaker. How did we get in this situation to begin with?
Well, Holly, 3 weeks ago, actually, Speaker McCarthy, when he got the job at the beginning of this new Congress last January, remember, it took like 5 days and 15 votes among Republicans even to get him in there. And he had to agree to a whole series of precise conditions to please the far right wing of the Republican Party. And one of those conditions was a single member at any time in his party could make a motion to vacate. That's the language. And when, if that goes, may make that motion, they have to have a vote in a new speaker. So real quickly, Matt Gaetz of Florida, who's always been hostile to McCarthy, made that motion, angry at McCarthy for cutting a deal with the Democrats so we wouldn't have a government shutdown. And I guess that's what Gaetz wanted, and wanted to bring McCarthy to heel. And so he did this motion. The speaker was vacated. McCarthy lost the election. And 3 weeks ago, then we've been paralysis, because it's worth reviewing what the Constitution has to say about the Speaker of the House. It's one of the most important positions in government. It's third in line for the presidency, the Speaker, and Speaker basically controls what legislation can go to the House floor. Without a Speaker, the entire federal branch of government, executive, legislative branch, comes to a shutdown, and nothing can get through. And so for 3 weeks, the federal legislative branch has been in effect paralysis, even as obviously we're facing a whole series of very important issues like the globe on fire and the need for money for, say, Israel and Ukraine. Well, nothing can happen without a speaker. So finally, Republicans, after 3 weeks of really bitter infighting and conflict in their own ranks, finally put a speaker forth.
Are you surprised it took that long?
Yeah, these are high stakes. I'm surprised at the depth of bitterness and conflict within the ranks of the Republican Party. And also, I'm surprised in the fact that what this shows is that former President Trump really is the kingmaker of the Republican Party. What happened on Wednesday was really revealing. Republicans finally put, the fourth choice up, and that is a guy from Minnesota named Representative Tom Emmer. Tom Emmer's a conservative Republican, but he wasn't conservative enough. He, in fact, had voted to certify President Biden's victory, which up until recently had just been a routine thing. The other party wins, you certify their victory, and that's what happens. But that's, an unpardonable sin now for many Republicans, and it certainly was for President Trump. Trump put the word out, I don't want Emmer, called him a globalist and a Republican in name only. And so his folks in Congress lined up to defeat Emmer. And finally, after, this paralysis goes on, really raising some real questions about our capacity to lead in the global stage, they finally got this guy, Mike Johnson, whose apparently principal criteria for the jobs are, he hasn't offended anybody. He's so obscure that a lot of Republicans are struggling to even get his name right. They call him Mike Rogers or Jim Johnson. Dana Milbank said in the Washington Post. So he's obscure. He hasn't offended any of the factions, but he also has been a foremost architect of Trump's efforts in Congress to overturn the 2020 election. He's one of these election deniers. And for many people around the world, and can I confess for me, that's a real concerning quality to have in a Speaker of the House. One of the basic criteria for a functioning democracy is that, you have elections. Sometimes your person wins, sometimes they don't. And when your person doesn't win, you just walk away. You concede, and you try harder the next time. And you don't make this massive, weird, wacko conspiracy that your guy really did win. And so to have a person now, a Speaker of the House, who did Trump's bidding over and over in Congress to try to overturn the 2020 election results is a pretty scary thing to have in a functioning democracy. So, that's some of the concern about our new Speaker, Mike Johnson.
Do you think he's going to have to tiptoe around and kind of like McCarthy and do what some of the people say and what he promised? Do you think he promised anything to get the job?
It's hard to know. Part of what apparently was going on was Republican exhaustion. Look, they know that this was doing to their polling data, and a lot of Americans are scratching their head, thinking, polls show that people want a Republican Congress, but there's a lot of rethinking going on. People are thinking, if Republicans can't even govern themselves, why should we put them in charge of governing the country? And so, they got their guy in there, and he again, one vote in his party, you can motion to vacate the Speaker. And so he's going to have to do a real real high wire act. And this is not a guy with lots of experience. He's never had a lot of leadership positions. Dana Milbank called him the least, the Washington Post called him the least experienced speaker we've had in 150 years. And it's going to have a pretty steep learning curve against of a very fractious and divided and angry and conflicted party in the House of Representatives. Much less the Democrats, but even his own party is deeply divided, which is what kept this government in paralysis for 3 weeks.
Right. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the future. Perry, thank you very much for joining us today.
Always glad to be with you, Holly.
All right, don't go away. Noon Edition continues in a moment.